Ezekiel 44, 1 through 31. Devotional focus verse. And they shall teach my people the difference between the holy and profane, and cause them to discern between the unclean and the clean. Ezekiel 44, 23. Over the years, our family has had several tropical fish aquariums. Our children found the wide variety of fish shapes and colors intriguing, and we enjoyed the calming effect of watching the fish swim about in the tank. However, we learned that it takes a fair amount of work to properly maintain the tank environment and keep the fish healthy. One of the most critical tasks was keeping the water and tank clean, and a number of steps were necessary to ensure that. The water had to be purified from any chemicals harmful to fish before the fish were added to the tank. So we installed a recirculation pump with filters, a sponge filter to remove impurities that could be seen, and a charcoal filter to remove impurities that could not be seen. We discovered that it is important to keep the chemical balance, pH, of the water correct for the particular species of fish. We carefully watched for signs of algae in the tank and removed it whenever it appeared. When those steps were taken, we enjoyed an eye-catching scene of tranquility right in our living room. When the necessary steps were neglected, the results were cloudy water, algae growing on the tank walls, and eventually dead fish. The difference between clean and unclean water was a life or death matter for the inhabitants of our tank. In today's text, Ezekiel outlined regulations regarding the temple in restored Israel and requirements for those who would serve as priests in it. Our focus verse summarizes the priest's primary duty: to teach God's people the difference between the holy and profane, and cause them to discern between the unclean and the clean. Historically, God had intended that His people thrive in the land of promise as a separate and pure people. Before Judah's destruction, one of His accusations against the house of Israel was that they had failed to preserve the sanctity of the temple. See Ezekiel 8. Such neglect would not be tolerated in the new temple. God gave instructions for proper worship and explicit directions regarding how to keep worship pure. These instructions included both obvious things that could be seen and the less obvious attitudes of the heart. The importance of maintaining holiness and purity before God is no less vital in our day. In our personal lives, this begins with salvation from sin, which removes the stain and guilt of committed sins. Entire sanctification is a second, definite work of grace that will cleanse and purify our unseen motives and attitudes. This state of heart cleanliness is sustained by taking careful note of the difference between the clean and unclean in the world around us, and asking for God's help in avoiding any contaminating influences. Purity is not something that we can afford to overlook or neglect. It is a matter of spiritual life or death. Background information. Chapter 44 outlines regulations for worship in the new temple. The guidelines and restrictions primarily applied to four groups: the prince, strangers, Levites, and priests. Given directly by the Lord God, these guidelines closely paralleled what Ezekiel had learned about worship from the law of Moses, though in some cases the new requirements were even more exacting. The restriction on usage of the eastern gate was a command not covered in the law. Because the Lord had entered the temple from the east, see chapter 43, that ground was sacred, and the gate was to remain closed. Only the prince could enter the outer court from that direction. The prince, God's appointed leader mentioned in verse 3, is alluded to many times in Ezekiel's temple vision. His actions correspond with historical functions of princes, tribal leaders, or chieftains in Israel, as outlined in the instructions of Numbers 7. Bible scholars have differing views regarding the identity of the prince. Though not a king or a priest, he is a key figure in the restored temple system of worship. His faithful discharge of duties is contrasted to the corrupt princes mentioned earlier in Ezekiel and in the history of Israel. Because he offered a sin offering for himself, see Ezekiel 45:22, had sons, see Ezekiel 46:16, and was warned about corruption, see Ezekiel 46:18. Most commentators agree that he cannot be the Messiah, though he is a descendant of David. The designation of stranger and the entry restriction in verse 9 was not based on ethnicity. Jewish historians define a stranger as one whose deeds have become alienated from his Father in heaven. This is an apostate who worships idols. They are the ones of uncircumcised heart. God's holy sanctuary was a place set apart for worship. It was not to be an object of tourism or casual curiosity. The people of Israel had been taught monotheism, belief in one God, since the time of Moses, but this concept was exceptional among the nations of that era. Few strangers would have embraced such a belief. Temple duties were assigned to the tribe of Levi in verses 10 through 16. However, many of the Levites were prohibited from performing priestly duties because they had been unfaithful in the past. Verse 10 states that they had gone away far from me when Israel went astray, a reference to when Jeroboam set up alternative worship that divided Israel and turned the people from God. See 1 Kings 12. Since some of the Levites followed that apostasy, priestly duties in Ezekiel's temple were assigned to the Zadokites, who had remained faithful to God. The detailed instructions in verses 17 through 31 reinforced what Ezekiel knew from study of the Torah. Proximity to God required great care and reverence, and certain outward indicators of holiness were required. For example, verse 20 mandated that priests were not to shave their heads or have long hair, as such extremes would emulate the worship customs of surrounding heathen nations. Requirements for priests were more strict than for other Israelites, as it was their duty to teach the people the difference between the holy and profane, and the clean and unclean. The inheritance and provision for the priests described in verses 28 through 31 parallel those established by Moses under the law. They were to have no land allotment, as God Himself would be their inheritance, and the offerings brought by the people would be their food. Conclusion. The principle of taking care to discern between the holy and profane is still an important one. It is vital for believers to maintain purity before the world in their walks with the Lord.
Ezekiel chapter 44. Then he brought me back the way of the gate of the outward sanctuary which looketh toward the east, and it was shut. Then said the Lord unto me, This gate shall be shut, it shall not be opened, and no man shall enter in by it, because the Lord, the God of Israel, hath entered in by it, therefore it shall be shut. It is for the prince, he shall sit in it to eat bread before the Lord, he shall enter by the way of the porch of that gate, and shall go out by the way of the same. Then brought he me the way of the north gate before the house, and I looked, and, behold, the glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord, and I fell upon my face. And the Lord said unto me, Son of man, mark well, and behold with thine eyes, and hear with thine ears all that I say unto thee concerning all the ordinances of the house of the Lord, and all the laws thereof, and mark well the entering in of the house, with every going forth of the sanctuary. And thou shalt say to the rebellious, even to the house of Israel, Thus saith the Lord God, O ye house of Israel, let it suffice you of all your abominations. In that ye have brought into my sanctuary strangers, uncircumcised in heart, and uncircumcised in flesh, to be in my sanctuary, to pollute it, even my house, when ye offer my bread, the fat and the blood, and they have broken my covenant because of all your abominations. And ye have not kept the charge of mine holy things, but ye have set keepers of my charge in my sanctuary for yourselves. Thus saith the Lord God, No stranger, uncircumcised in heart, nor uncircumcised in flesh, shall enter into my sanctuary, of any stranger that is among the children of Israel. And the Levites that are gone away far from me, when Israel went astray, which went astray away from me after their idols, they shall even bear their iniquity. Yet they shall be ministers in my sanctuary, having charge at the gates of the house, and ministering to the house, they shall slay the burnt offering and the sacrifice for the people, and they shall stand before them to minister unto them. Because they ministered unto them before their idols, and caused the house of Israel to fall into iniquity, therefore have I lifted up mine hand against them, saith the Lord God, and they shall bear their iniquity. And they shall not come near unto me, to do the office of a priest unto me, nor to come near to any of my holy things, in the most holy place, but they shall bear their shame, and their abominations which they have committed. But I will make them keepers of the charge of the house, for all the service thereof, and for all that shall be done therein. But the priests the Levites, the sons of Zadok, that kept the charge of my sanctuary when the children of Israel went astray from me, they shall come near to me to minister unto me, and they shall stand before me to offer unto me the fat and the blood, saith the Lord God. They shall enter into my sanctuary, and they shall come near to my table, to minister unto me, and they shall keep my charge. And it shall come to pass, that when they enter in at the gates of the inner court, they shall be clothed with linen garments, and no wool shall come upon them, whiles they minister in the gates of the inner court, and within. They shall have linen bonnets upon their heads, and shall have linen breeches upon their loins, they shall not gird themselves with anything that causes sweat. And when they go forth into the utter court, even into the utter court to the people, they shall put off their garments wherein they ministered, and lay them in the holy chambers, and they shall put on other garments, and they shall not sanctify the people with their garments. Neither shall they shave their heads, nor suffer their locks to grow long, they shall only poll their heads. Neither shall any priest drink wine, when they enter into the inner court. Neither shall they take for their wives a widow, nor her that is put away, but they shall take maidens of the seed of the house of Israel, or a widow that had a priest before. And they shall teach my people the difference between the holy and profane, and cause them to discern between the unclean and the clean. And in controversy they shall stand in judgment, and they shall judge it according to my judgments, and they shall keep my laws and my statutes in all mine assemblies, and they shall hallow my Sabbaths. And they shall come at no dead person to defile themselves, but for father, or for mother, or for son, or for daughter, for brother, or for sister that hath had no husband, they may defile themselves. And after he is cleansed, they shall reckon unto him 7 days. And in the day that he goeth into the sanctuary, unto the inner court, to minister in the sanctuary, he shall offer his sin offering, saith the Lord God. And it shall be unto them for an inheritance, I am their inheritance, and ye shall give them no possession in Israel, I am their possession. They shall eat the meat offering, and the sin offering, and the trespass offering, and every dedicated thing in Israel shall be theirs. And the first of all the firstfruits of all things, and every oblation of every sort of your oblations, shall be the priest's. Ye shall also give unto the priest the first of your dough, that he may cause the blessing to rest in thine house. The priest shall not eat of anything that is dead of itself, or torn, whether it be fowl or beast,